Follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram. Subscribe on YouTube. Don't forget to like. Den of Thieves Part 2, Pantera, or Pantera, however you want to pronounce that, if you want the European accent. The build-up in this film isn't as good as the first one, but when we get to the climax, the real conflict of the film and the ending, I would say it is a lot more suspenseful. Or I would say just as suspenseful. I kind of like the ending of this film much better than I like the ending of the first film. But without the first film, the ending of the sequel would not be as impactful. So basically what I'm saying is, if you've not seen the first Den of Thieves, the ending of this film is not going to hit the same for you. Like, you really need to watch the first film to appreciate the ending of this film, because it kind of does bring it back to a character arc that is fulfilled for one of the characters, like a redemption for him. Anyways, this film again follows a little bit of this Ocean's 12 journey now, because like in Ocean's 11, the heists are taking place in America. Now in this new film, much like Ocean's 12, we got Den of Thieves 2. The sequel is also taking place in Europe. So we're seeing some followed inspiration from the Steven Soderbergh films with the Den of Thieves films. We also get some great UFC cameos. Michael Bisping returns. We get Cyril Gahn and Vitor Belfort. I was expecting to see Michael Bisping, and I wonder who's doing the casting, because how are they getting these UFC fighters in these Den of Thieves movies? It's just such a random film property that I would not expect to see UFC fighters in. I like it, but it's just, where did that casting decision come from? Because I want to see more. Now, the question thematically in this film is a would you rather scenario. Would you rather die at the hands of the mafia, or would you rather be betrayed by a friend? That's the theme here. That's the scenario. I'll say too, the relationship building between all the characters in the sequel isn't done as well as the first film. I do like the way the characters' interactions and momentum builds in the first film a lot more than I like the momentum of this one. But in this film, it is still very impactful towards the end. It just doesn't feel like it when you're watching it. When you're watching a lot of these character moments where they're supposed to be, building bonds with each other and stuff, once you get to the end of the film, it all kind of really hits home. I just wish that I felt something as it was happening. I wish I could have had that connection to the characters as they were having these moments together. But for me, it just didn't really feel, I don't know, maybe like the chemistry between the actors, the performances just didn't feel convincing. But for the story, you understand why it's important later. Like, it pays off later, it just doesn't feel like it's important at the time you're watching it. Before we continue, I'm going to get into some vague spoilers that won't spoil the movie for you, but it will be a little bit more information that maybe if you want to go into the film not knowing, I wouldn't blame you. So we're going to give you 10 seconds from this quick commercial break, and then we'll get back into these very unspecific spoilers. The Stars and Stripes Freedom Deck ships exclusively in the United States. Available on eBay and Etsy, link in the description below. Okay, so the main drama of the film is built around some diamonds. We get a heist that happens with these diamonds in the film. Ice Cube Jr. goes onto his first heist with Michael Bisping, and they steal some diamonds. However, we do learn that the diamonds belong to a mafia family, so they basically set themselves up for a little bit of trouble later by stealing these diamonds. There are some story beats that feel like they go nowhere. I think they kind of just wanted to have some things from the first film help move the story from America to Europe for Gerard Butler's character, Big Nick. For example, in the first film, I felt like his family troubles at home didn't really add much to the story, but I think in this film they wanted to really cut off that thread of this character's connection to the family. So they kind of start off with this divorce scene where he's in the bathroom after going to court or something like that, and he basically loses custody and he's divorced, and it kind of ties up that loose end from the first film. But again, that in the first film, it didn't really have an impact on his character's story throughout the rest of the film. It kind of just felt like an unnecessary part of his character because it didn't add anything really to the story. They didn't play a role into advancing the plot. So I think they decided, let's cut that in the second film. We don't need to have him struggle with these family troubles. And then there was also too the stripper that he has sex with in the first film to humiliate one of his enemies in the first film. She has this kind of weird story where she's gonna blackmail him with a sex tape. That doesn't play any part later in the film. It's not like the stripper comes back and says, "Hey, remember, give me my whatever, give me my money, or else I'm gonna release this sex tape." Like the stripper storyline doesn't come back, because she kind of threatens him. But later in the film, if I didn't notice it, it was like a 2.5 hour film. But I feel like I didn't notice that part of the story come back to haunt him or if he succeeds in it. You know what I'm saying? So her only purpose in the story was to give him information to get to Europe. And I guess I can't really think of another character who would have served that purpose. So I just think that giving her this situation where she's kind of blackmailing him, but it doesn't come back later, felt unnecessary. There's probably another way that him getting the information about Ice Cube Jr. being in Europe could have been given to him. I don't know what it is right now. Trying to think off the top of my head, I got nothing. But what they gave us in the film didn't feel deserved. And then we get backstory on Ice Cube Jr.'s motive as a thief, which is kind of the typical, oh, my family was struggling and we were poor, and then I became good at noticing things, and now I'm a thief, and now I only like to do it because it's a challenge. So it's like, it kind of goes on to this weird thing where he says, I do this for my family, but then he's like, in the same sentence, he's like, actually, I don't really care about my family. I just like doing this because it's like, I'm good at it. But where we really get intense in this film, where the film really gets exciting and fun and gets you sweating in your seat, is when the main heist takes place. We get this buildup of where they're going to steal from next. But once they actually have to get into the building, the fun really starts for the, especially as they're using a kind of like a gymnastic pole to shimmy from one building up into the next building. That was pretty intense. I could only imagine how nervous it must make a person feel to think, oh my God, if anything happens to this pole, I'm dead. But yeah, so the whole heist scene, especially when they're trying to get from room to room and not get detected by cameras, and they have these small windows of time, and it really does give you, as the audience, this anxious feeling of almost like you're there with them, like, hurry up, get to point A, to point B, to point C, and then get all the way right back to point A. I would say the heist scene and the escape scene is really well done. They do a good job at making it suspenseful. And I really like, this is what I wanted to talk about, the ending here. So the ending, I guess we'll get spoiler for the ending. So if you haven't seen the film, I'm going to give you a few more seconds to get out of here because I'm going to spoil the ending of the film right now. Because I just want to share some thoughts on the ending and why I thought it was impactful and well done. So the heist is successful, right? We got Ice Cube Jr. and Gerard Butler pulled off this nearly impossible heist. And we see this friendship that's built up between them. And they're celebrating with the Panthers, if you want to call it the Panteras, Las Panteras. They're all together reaping their rewards, all to find out that they've all been set up by this Italian police force to arrest all of them. And it was all a setup the whole time for Gerard Butler's character. Which, for those of you who are sticking around for the spoilers, in the first film, Ice Cube Jr. gets the upper hand, fools everybody, escapes, and makes it to Europe. And this leaves Gerard Butler in this humiliating situation as a cop who's been chasing these thieves, and he is left for nothing. So it really ties this redemption arc for himself because he was being humiliated in his job, outwitted, and his character had to sacrifice a lot to right the wrong of the first film. But he has to do a lot of wrong things in this film in order to right it. You know what I'm saying? But even he feels guilty for kind of giving up Ice Cube Jr. Like you could tell that the friendship becomes meaningful to him. So when he's being asked by one of his European police friends, he says, living on the other side feels pretty good, huh? And then Gerard Butler's like, yeah, it feels too good. And you could tell you could see the guilt in his face when he knows that the Italian police are going to be showing up momentarily. You could just tell he feels bad about what's going to happen. And then when it happens, you could tell he feels even more bad that it is now happening. But they do leave us with a setup for a part 3. I don't know if they're going to do it or not. I guess we'll have to see how financially successful this film is, if it makes enough money to warrant a third film. I don't know where they would go with it. To be honest, I kind of just like it as a 2-parter. I don't think we need a third film. If they do a third film, I don't really know what they're going to do next to change the dynamic between the characters because it feels like they both got one on each other. They're one for one now. Ice Cube Jr. got the victory in the first film, and then in the second film, we get the victory for Gerard Butler. But even in the end, he still helps out Ice Cube Jr., so he's not really stuck in captivity. Well, I guess technically not, because he ends up in captivity of this mafia crime boss, and he's basically become a captive to crime. He is now a hostage and a thief, a hostage and a criminal. So, yeah, I don't know. I really enjoyed this film, though. I think it was a sequel that was well done. And if you enjoyed the first film, I think for this film, you will enjoy it, especially the ending. The ending for this film, for me personally, I thought was really well done. Anyways, that's it. Follow us on Twitter at ghettoplex_mp4, on Instagram at ghettoplex.mp4, and subscribe to us on YouTube at ghettoplex. Be part of our story. Buy the Stars and Stripes Freedom Deck, the deck that defines the American dream. Ships in the USA only. Available from La Casa Loca on eBay and Etsy.